am Marsha Lewis. Let's talk. Today is Friday, January the 29th, 2021. We're going to do commentary about Meghan McCain. I see the past 2 days she's been on The View with her, in my opinion, her selected fake outrage in regard to President Biden using executive order. The past 2 days, this is what Meghan McCain, John McCain's been talking about. She's again, in my opinion, like I said, the selected fake outrage, criticizing President Biden for using executive orders. And as we know, this is pretty much what the previous person, Trump, did all the time. Executive orders, executive orders. I did not once hear Meghan McCain, John McCain's daughter, complaining about Trump using his privilege to use executive order. That's what many of the previous presidents have done in the past. When they saw the need, they used executive order. And in my opinion, Trump basically abused his power of using executive order, just like he abused his power as a whole throughout the 4 years of his presidency. And that is why he was impeached twice, because of just not doing what one should, that has that role, the commander-in-chief, doing what he chose to do and not what was best for the country, inciting violence, inciting the insurrection, and which was the reason for the House impeached him. He's the only United States president to have been impeached twice. Never before in our history had that happened, just like never before over 200 years ago, since 1814, that we have ever had a breach to our United States Capitol. But the first of this, it was incited by the sitting president at the time, the 45th president, Donald J. Trump. But again, like I said, Meghan McCain, she's, the past 2 days, she's been talking about executive order. President Biden using executive orders. And I'm going to play some clips. I like to play the clips so you can get maybe a better gist of what I'm speaking about. But I like how Sunny Hostin often brings the facts and the receipts. Like after Meghan had made her little talk or speech about President Biden using executive order. And my thing, it's only been a week. Wednesday, today is the 29th, so the 27th made a week that President Biden has even been in office as the president, as the 46th president. And we already got John McCain's daughter complaining about how he's using executive orders. But again, I didn't hear her complaining about the abuse of many things that Trump did. We know President Biden will be and this is my opinion. I believe, like Sunny and some other, Sarah even mentioned how she would rather see a president lead by legislature. Of course, I think we all will see, and I do believe that that's how President Biden will govern our country, is by legislation. But at the same time, like Sunny mentioned, it was because of the damage, a lot of damage that Trump had already put in place. Therefore, President Biden had to do as he did, like on day one, sign some executive order. And yes, he's been signing some since. Because again, you have to look at what Trump has done in just 4 years. Just think if he had won a second term, where would we truly be? We already got an insurrection. So where would we be if this man, who is just as corrupt comes, and then you got the Republican Party, the GOP, that has not held him accountable once. But in fact, they have emboldened him and just enabled him to do what he wants, as long as he was doing some things that they want, like putting conservative judges on the Supreme Court justice, giving tax breaks to the rich, keeping their pockets fatter, their bank accounts fat. They don't, and when the government shut down, they continue to get their paychecks. So as long as he was doing what they wanted, and let's not forget the main thing, he been that outspoken voice of racism, which many of them are, as we're seeing them do now, just like the Marjorie Taylor Greens out there actually mocking, falling in behind, harassing a young teenage boy that had experienced a school shooting, because she's saying that he's trying to take away her gun right just because he was lobbying Congress to try and get better gun control and to stop school shootings. You got a grown woman, a mother of 3, out there talking about her Second Amendment and her gun rights. Then you got the Republican Congress out there refusing to comply with the Capitol Police since the insurrection take place. They have put in stronger measures. They must go through metal detectors, and they're supposed to have like a search to make sure they're not carrying weapons. It's been stated. That's going to be another story, so I'm going to leave that there. But again, to me, it's just the selective outrage of Meghan McCain complaining about President Biden using executive order. And we're going to listen to some of the clips here. Let me see. I'm going to start with yesterday.
John Kerry, I am one of those people that thinks it's deeply elitist. What he said is that John Kerry owns a private jet, and private jets exert 40 times more carbon emissions than flying on a regular plane. And anyone who is going on television, let alone working in an administration that just got rid of 10,000 jobs with the Keystone Pipeline, shouldn't be riding around in a private jet. If it is this much of an existential threat, as Joe Biden's administration is saying, and many people believe, and I too believe, but I have a different way of going about the solutions, then you shouldn't be flying around in private jets. And I think part of the problem is for average Americans, they see the deep hypocrisy in this, because it seems to be that everyone should make a sacrifice, middle class or below, but no one in the elites needs to. And I just think it's ridiculous. I also think the way John Kerry's statements have been interpreted to many people, not just on the right, but many people in the middle, is learn to code, which was the answer to coal miners, that they just needed to get into another industry and learn to code. And he said, learn to use solar. Well, solar energy has been around since about the 90s, and I saw a clip of Bill Maher talking about how he's been trying to install solar panels into his house in California, which is a place that is obviously filled with people who are in agreement on climate change, and he can't get it installed. So I think it's ridiculous. And in response to what Sarah said about executive orders, I think you're 100% right. I worry about this seesawing pendulum going back and forth, where we're just using executive orders to legislate. And it's not just me and Sarah that have criticism of it. The New York Times has come out pretty hard criticism. The New York Times isn't exactly a bastion of conservatism, saying, quote, this is no way to make law. It's a flawed substitute for legislation. Now, if you're Joe Biden and you're losing the New York Times on this, and you've made 19 executive orders as opposed to President Trump, who did 5 in his first week, President Obama, who did 5 in his first week, President Clinton and Bush, who did 0, it may be time to start working with the other side, because if you're just going to legislate in the same way that President Trump did, this isn't a sea change. This isn't healing, and this isn't coming together. I thought the whole point of the Biden administration is that you weren't going to be like the Trump administration.
As we all know, there is no way that the President Biden would be like, or and really should never even be compared to Trump, and neither should the Biden-Harris presidential administration ever should be compared to the Trump administration, the Trump-Pence administration. And of course, I know John McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain, knows this, but I'm sure that those were the talking point. I'm quite sure that her husband threw in there for her to say. And let's listen to how Sunny responded to this on yesterday. Now, this is yesterday's 2 clips, and I'm showing, and then I'm going to show a clip from today as well. But this is today.
The quickest. Well, I think there was so much that the Biden administration had to undo, so much damage. Right. The quickest way to undo that damage would be through executive orders. And if you look at what President Trump did during his one term, he actually signed 220 orders during his one term, where George W. Bush signed 291 executive orders over 8 years. Barack Obama issued 276 orders over 8 years. Bill Clinton, 364 orders over 8 years. And so both sides use these executive orders, but President Trump actually used more orders in one term, 4 years, than all of the other presidents. And so this is something, again, it's done often, and Joe Biden really has his work cut out for him. And I think, legislation is always, of course, a better way to get things done. And I think we're going to see a lot of legislation, but I don't think it's inappropriate what we're seeing coming out of the Biden administration.
And I agree with Sunny for the damage that had already been done, many things that Trump had already put in place. No, I don't have a problem with him already within a week doing the executive orders that he had put in place, because he's trying to restore us. He's trying to restore a relationship with our former allies and things of this perspective. And just like I said, all the racism, like Trump putting bans on don't want Muslim in the travel and all of that. His wife is already trying to put in place to find the parents of those children that Trump snatched from those parents from out of their arms, separated kids and their parents at the border and locked those children in cages, not giving them the proper proper grooming, because again they were just locked up in cages. Proper grooming that children need, especially young women. So it's just a lot that Trump had done. A lot of it not right. So yeah, we had to do executive orders, and again, I don't have a problem. Now this is Meghan McCain on today's show talking with President Biden's White House communications director. Her name is Kate Bedingfield, and again, this is Meghan talking about, for the second day, President Biden using executive order. So let's listen to her little fake outrage, in my opinion, today.
Already signed more. In President Biden's short time in office, he has already signed more than 40 executive orders. I took particular issue with his rescinding of the so-called Mexico City policy, which will allow the U.S. to fund groups that provide or promote abortion in other countries. I'm not an ever-Trumper, and I wasn't a MAGA person either, and part of it is my commitment to life. It's a really big part of who I am. I'm ardently pro-life. It is a huge, huge, huge part of who I am. A new Marxist poll shows that 77% of Americans oppose that policy, including 64% of people who identify themselves as pro-choice. If President Biden wants to reach across the aisle, and is this really the best way to do it?
Well, thanks for your question, Megan. And here's what I would say about the global gag rule, which is that it's about getting access to safe healthcare, safe reproductive health for women around the world. And there have been a lot of studies that have shown that the gag rule has not decreased the number of abortions. It's actually increased the number of unsafe abortions around the world. So this is a policy that's really about ensuring access to safe, reliable healthcare for women all around the world. What I would say more broadly to your question about EOs and working together, what President Biden has done in his first days in office here is reverse some of the most egregious actions of the Trump administration. Things like Trump executive orders that allow for increased pollution coming out of factories across the country. So what he's done is look at some of the most egregious, damaging actions of the Trump administration done by executive order, and used his authority as president to roll those back and to undo that damage and to start to get us on a better path. But look, he is absolutely, his preference is for legislative action. He intends to do the vast majority of his agenda via legislative action. Look, you know him well, Megan. He was in the Senate for 36 years. He believes deeply in the role of the Congress, and he intends to do his agenda by legislation. That's part of why we've already proposed the American Rescue Plan, why we're working so hard to get it passed. But we are in a moment of crisis, and so when he came into office, he wanted to use the scope of his power within the power of his executive authority to roll back some of the most damaging things that the Trump administration did to ensure that we're starting to make progress on COVID, on the economy, on racial equity, on climate, on immigration. So that's what those executive orders are about.
And I love how ethically, how professionally, how tactfully that the communication director, Kate Bedingfield responded to Meghan McCain, because what she said is true. And like I said, how Sunny responded yesterday, Trump did a lot of damage. So therefore, President Biden had to go in on day one and continue as we are moving forward to, one, try to restore the soul of our country, to try and rectify all this damage, so that we can find a better solution, like she said, for our economy, for the pandemic, for immigration, and just so many other things that will take place and will need to take place. But to be criticizing President Biden for just like a week and 2 days, because today is Friday, and like I stated, Wednesday just made a week of him being the new president and his new current administration. But you got Meghan McCain out here criticizing. But again, I didn't see her criticizing the abuse that Trump, and like I said, many of his things he put into place was through executive order. But again, you got the fake outrage of Meghan McCain. Sunny put it so eloquently when she said Trump, and as we know, Trump only was a one-term president, was impeached twice, only served 4 years, because that is each president is 4 years for one term. If you do 2 terms, you get 8 years. A person can only be president twice with a total of 8 years. But within a one-term president being impeached twice, this man, Trump, put in order, out of 4 years, 220 executive orders. Now, I'm going to read George W. Bush, President Obama, and President Clinton. So out of these previous 3 presidents who served 8 years, 2 terms, President George W. Bush, total for 8 years, 2 terms as president, 291. President Obama, total for 8 years, a 2-term president, a total of 276. President Clinton, which he did use the most in the executive order, a total of 364, 8 years, a 2-term president. But at the same time, Trump used 220, and he was only a 1-term, served 4 years as president. But again, that's the outrage that Meghan McCain is griping about now. Like I said, this girl, this woman, she flip-flops so much. One day she's in support of impeachment. Then the next, like I say, she's calling out Katie Couric, because Katie Couric was answered a question that was asked of her because of how Trump had displayed himself and where we're at now. And the only thing she can complain about is cause President Biden, as she said, over 40-something executive order. But look at the damage Trump left him. Like I said, crisis. And we're trying to restore the soul of this country. We're trying to rebuild relationship with our foreign allies. That Trump has changed the situation, changed the relationship. We're trying to seek all the answers that we can to find the best solution to help us come out of this pandemic, that hopefully we can go back to life with some normalcy that we previously had. Maybe we can stop wearing masks. Maybe we can actually be with our family and friends like we once were, and at our leisure, without having to use so many precautions or being in smaller groups. Many people talking about that they can't go out, can't go to the movies, can't go on vacation. Although we know life hasn't completely stopped, but there have been put limitation and things have been asked of us, of we the American citizens, from the experts, from the people like at the CDC and Dr. Fauci and all of them. But the only thing John McCain's daughter can complain about is because within a week and 2 days, President Biden has put in place over 40 executive orders, and Trump, a total of 4 years, a 1-term president, actually put in 220 executive orders. But again, this is Meghan McCain. We really don't expect much better, do we? Not from her. I'm LaMarsha Lewis. Let's stop.